Good afternoon, family. This is Elliott McCants. Welcome to Black Watch. I know we've had a few some time that we missed. Part of it was due, of course, to the election and electricity surrounding the election, which we'll talk about, a little bit. But the other part about it is, I had a family member who passed away, my older sister, and let me give you all a little bit of a tip about that. If you got a family member that you've been blessed to take care of and be part of their life, especially if they're a little bit older, don't complain. Do the job and take care of them. Um, because then you will get blessed because of it. Now, I don't know what people believe. I'm not asking about what you believe. What you believe is what you believe. But have no animosity in your heart and your spirit. If you have the opportunity to take care of someone, because that is the greatest gift that we get other than our children from God, is to be able to serve someone, which is what mankind was here to do. Not be um, not be full of jealousy and envy and hatred, but to be able to serve people and take care of people. That's the greatest gift that we got. Just a little bit about my sister. She was a nurse for 50 years, so she took care of people for a very long time. And after my mom passed, she became like a mom to us, and that's very, very African. We can be in denial, and sometimes even me, I knew that I would act like, wait, I'm grown. Well, you know what? To her, it didn't matter. I might say it, but she would just subtly change the way that she would operate with us, to let folks know that, hey, look, mama's gone. I'm the elder mother or elder woman in the family. So she assumed the role of being mother. You know, it wasn't that was my sister. It was really my mom's. And it really came to me this morning when I woke up that I just buried my other mama, like for real. So if you have people in your family that you're taking care of, take care of them. Don't have any animosity. That don't mean that you won't be frustrated with stuff. That's okay. But have no animosity about the fact that you have been put in a position to take care of that person, because it is a blessing from God, because it's about servitude and about serving. So this show for a while is going to be dedicated to my sister. Her name is Sandra Gilliard, Sandra Marie Gilliard. She passed away on November 1st. And we just had her service on Friday, which is the 8th. So show is going to be dedicated to her. And she would always tell me, we're going to do what you do. Do what you do. Do what you do. So that being said, I'm not sure how much we want to get into this election stuff. You know, I'm gonna touch on it a little bit, but one of my big brothers, his name is Baba Jaman Jordan. He's in Detroit. If you all get a chance to talk to him or follow some of his posts, he's been named the official Detroit historian. And the brother's deep and the brother's dope. I know a little bit. This brother's a walking encyclopedia of many different things, and I love him for it. And his example has been a challenge for me to up my game as a historian and be more of a student and a steward of our history and our culture. So he's got some excellent ideas about what happened politically. One of my other mentors, Dr. George Moss, who's here, and he's a professor. He was a teacher in Beecher Community Schools for a long time. He actually started the Black Arts program out there. Catch him on Facebook sometime. He'll post some things. They may not be popular, but he's giving it to people from his political view. And check him out as well. That's one of my mentors, and a few other people out there. But let's say this. I know people were super excited about the fact that Vice President Harris was given the opportunity to uh, make a move towards the presidency. That was a great thing. But there, we have to give kudos to a woman who did it back in the 70s, I believe 1974. Her name was, we'll call her Dr. Shirley Chisholm, who ran, I believe, in the Independent Party and made some waves as a president, as a presidential attempt then. So we have to give some kudos to uh, Mrs. Shirley Chisholm. We also have to give some kudos for the attempt of uh, Vice President Kamala Harris for her assistance and or insistence on trying to run for the presidency. Now, I'm going to say this. We live in a racist, sexist country. I know everybody got all up in arms about her, this great possibility of her being a president, and that was great. She garnered 244 electoral votes. That's good too. But if you look at the map about how people voted, we have to be very clear that because of the misogynistic idea of this country, she was not going to win. I don't care what anybody says, because there's some other groups of people that were pulling the strings about who was going to win this election or who was not going to win this election. So we better be very clear about what position we thought that she was going to have. And in this country, in this Western society, because it doesn't have a culture, that wasn't going to happen. Now, for various reasons and various factors, it was great. People jumped on board. People was, oh, we're going to, the first 24 hours after she announced her presidency and her candidacy, $80 million was sent in. I'm going to say this again, and I've been saying it all along, and I think Uncle Mickey can can corroborate this. I'm saying it from day one. If we decided that we were going to take our monies and put them in the hands of people that were capable of solving those problems that we have in our communities, we would be off the chain in a good way. Because any issue that we might have would be solved, would be resolved, would be fixed, and it'd be at our own doings by our own hands. So in that first 24-hour period, she got over $80 million in her war chest in a 24-hour period. I'm not even trying to calculate how much that is, because that's a lot of money in 24 hours. She ran a good race. She wasn't dirty. Wasn't paying attention to all the other stuff. I don't know how dirty he was, but at the end of the day, the powers that be were not going to elect her president, regardless of what it looked like. If you look at the map of the states and how they voted, you had people talking about, oh, black men didn't support her, and I believe over 70% black men voted for her, over 70%. So that was a misnomer on purpose. And people didn't have to speak to us about whether we were going to vote for her or not. Because at the end of the day, still, left wing, right wing, same bird. Okay, that's my position on that. I'm quite sure you all are going to have some commentary. If you do, send it in and we'll do the best we can to answer. Now, the reason why we're also here is we started a presentation a couple of weeks ago about how we, before things fell apart, because again, we had to be very clear, cultures, just like everything else, goes in a cycle. Now, this is November, about near mid-November, so it's getting colder, right? So the earth goes in a cycle, leaves go in a cycle, plants go in a cycle, grass goes in a cycle, trees go in a cycle, The spring and summer they had leaves. Now the leaves are falling off. This is a cycle, right? Civilizations have cycles as well. One of my teachers mentioned to us, his name is Dr. John Henry Clark, that African people, Al-Kibalanian people, we got to stop saying African. Al-Kibalanian people had three golden ages. Greece did not have but one. Rome only had one. No other cultures had any golden ages like African people have, and we've had three. Okay, so we started our presentation. Um, Ms. Nichols Martin, thank you very much for watching. We appreciate you being here. We started our presentation a couple of weeks ago before we were interrupted by life and by the election because Uncle Mick had to go be the newsman on the ground and take care of business like that. And we appreciate that. And thank you for Miss Winters for announcing some things to help us all get through the election and some things personally to me, even though she didn't mention what was going on with me personally. I still appreciate her saying that we'd be back. And hopefully you all stay with us because we're going to get bigger and we're going to grow because we need to know these things. And I will do more than just ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet. Um, we know it as Egypt, but ancient Kemet, because there are other various multitudes of civilizations that were birthed and grew on the continent. And they gave life to other people. They gave life and ideas to other people. They gave life and ideas to the rest of the world. But Egypt is the most explored, but it's also the one that they're going to want to destroy the imagery of. And Dr. Shenkat Diop is one of the foremost prolific scientists who in 1974 at UNESCO, which stands for, it's a group of people who kind of really want to say how they disseminate cultural and civilizations information. So everybody was claiming, and of course European people were claiming that Egypt was not part of Africa because it's supposed to be part of the Middle East. Well, if you look at where the Middle East really is, it's in the middle of the ocean somewhere. So there's no Middle East. African people occupy the area we call Israel. We talked about that before, even where the name Israel comes from. Isis, I-S, Ra, sun god Ra, and Elohim, which is the god that the ancient Ethiopians used to call by name. Israel. Isis coming from Isis or Set. Ra coming from the rays of the sun, which is the sun god Ra. And Elohim, which is the ancient name that the Ethiopians use to call God. Israel. Israel. Okay, but that means you got to study. We all have to, but we got to study. Now, so Egypt, the Kemites occupy all of that space. It was all African, right? So as we get an opportunity to go to the presentation, we're going to pull up a couple of slides I want us to take a look at. Okay, let's go down to, let me see. Let's do the number 4, right? Let's see. Now, these are all African people, right? In ancient Kemet. And these are on the pyramid text. Now, if you look at them, they are dark skinned. The only reason why there's a fading of the color is because of the exposure to the chemicals that are now present in the atmosphere. That paint used to be very, very dark. Now, I'm also quite sure that part of what's going on over in ancient Kemet is the Arabs are trying to whitewash, just like if you look at King Tut, he looks like some little boy who's Arab. They're trying to whitewash all of the pictures and all of the pharaohs and all of the queens who assumed pharaoh positions. They're trying to whitewash it so that they don't look African. So they're washing the paint off the walls on purpose. But as we continue with this presentation, it's going to continue to build and build and build. They're African from near the equator. The birth of mankind was in Africa, no other place. First, even Dr. Shinkat Job, and I believe Civilization of Barbarism, he suggested that there was what he called a two cradle theory. Cradle of mankind being born in one place, and other groups being born in another place. But the second cradle would have been where Chromagon or Neanderthal, let me slow down, where Neanderthal man comes in at, and he could be only 40,000 years old. Now, as I mentioned before, in ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, they're now opening up a museum, which is a $2 billion museum that has over 700,000 years of ancient Kemetic artifacts. So if that's the case, then that moves the age of mankind on the continent back at minimally another 800,000 years if we're going up to now. Now, this is my guesstimation. It could be more, could be less. But I'm inviting anybody that wants to go study. If you find out something different, bring it back. We can discuss it. We're open for information and ideas. I'm not claiming to be an expert. Our job is to share. But there's one thing that I want to point out, and we've done it here in this land under very adverse conditions. If we built civilizations, and we built those civilizations in unity, we built those civilizations under the law of being reciprocal with the land. We only took what we could, what we needed, and didn't beg for the rest or take the rest or sell the rest or anything else. Then we were at one with the land, right? Not only were we at one with the land, we were one with each other's people. Because the 42 admonitions of Ma'at, which is where the 10 commandments come from, tell us you don't take more than what you need. And I'm going to make sure that since I mentioned it, I'm going to put up a comparison the next time we meet that shows the 42 admonitions of Ma'at, not negative confessions, because that's what E.A. Wallace Budge called them, not negative confessions, and not this where this new version is where they take out not, because what it is when you die and you go to the halls of they call it a halls where Ani is present, and you go to the funeral halls and you have to stand before the scales, which they call now the scale of justice. So if we start to do some comparison about where people get this idea from, you'll see that they got all of these ideas from ancient Kemet. So when you see the scales of the judge's chamber, that's not European, that's African. They call it the scales of justice. In ancient Kemet, it was called the scales of weighing of the heart. So because an ostrich feather is very, very light, your heart, which was taken out because it was considered to be a very important part of your consciousness, the heart was taken out and it was put on a scale. And if it weighed more than the ostrich feather, then your heart will be devoured by Sekhmet. Now, the last time we was on this show, there was a woman that came on and she said something about there being many gods and there was a lot of God, and that's not the truth. Well, what she didn't understand or doesn't understand is everything that's created has the essence of God in it. If you come up with a new idea, a new invention, the essence of God gave you that concept, that idea. Now, I'm going to throw Uncle Mick in. He's talking about changing the design of the studio. Where did he get the inspiration from? Oh, okay. Right. The essence of God said, hey, let me give you something new. Just like no different from me working with this new concept, because I want people to learn and understand that at one time we were a very unified, very powerful force. And through circumstances of the downfall of our civilizations, our great ancient civilizations, those things happen. But once again, there's a cycle of things, right? So because of my God sense, it was let's do the show. And we call it Black Watch. Why? Because we're going to talk about things that are about us, for us, by us, so that we can start to become more unified and understand that, as Dr. John Henry Clark would say, we have no friends. So anytime a person is inspired by something, that is your God sense. That's your connection to God in order to not only have the idea, but follow through with the idea and move forward with the idea. Okay. So now, at one time when we were supremely unified, let's go back to the presentation, big bro. When we were supremely unified, our enemies feared the fact that we existed, which is the reason why we have so many, keep going, big bro. We have so many people. Is that? Let me click on that number 8. Let me see that real quick. Okay. Oh, that's Tut. Now, pause that real quick. I'm going to go to this in a second. But the reason why we have so many enemies is because people, once we started to get on the low end of the cycle of things, they don't want to give credit to where civilization comes from. You have black people, or supposedly black people, or African people in America who will claim that the pyramids were spaceships, all of this insanity with no proof. One of the authors that I used to like, and I really kind of was disappointed in his position, was Graham Hancock, who, again, in his racist ideology, was saying that African people could not create something as great as this level of civilization. So even biblically, the the buildings of all of this wonderful artwork and the carvings and everything else, who all have a message, was said was be done by slaves. Nobody, if you look at the pyramids, even to this day, you can't take a hair from off your head and with no cement slide it between two of those multi-ton bricks, because that's how tight the artistry was. And the reason why they look the way they look now is because during the Islamic invasion, they took the outer layer of the pyramids off to build their mosques. So they look like their steps, which they were in the first place, but at one time they were smooth. And we're told by reading they were so smooth that they reflected the sun. And they thought it was gold because that's how polished the rock was. But if we go back to this picture real quick, right? And I want y'all, and I'm gonna do some comparison of some things. So if you look at the and that is Thutmose the Third, but you look at what he's carrying, the crook and the flail. Doesn't that look familiar? The shepherd. The crook is to bring if you look at a shepherd, the the crook is to bring the flock back in so they wouldn't get too far, right? So now modern ranchers use dogs or whatever, but at one time, if you were walking and you had your sheep out in the pasture, you would use the crook in order to rein in one that might be going too far, and you use the flail if you had to tap them a little bit to bring them back in. But yeah, that's what it was for, to bring the sheep back in, or to make sure no predators would come, because of course sheep is not the most intelligent animal and it's fairly easy prey, right? So you would use the crook or the flail to bring the sheep back in, make sure no predators. But when they bury a pope, and I'm going to bring some of these other pictures in later on. The last pope that died and they buried him, they had him laid on his back with a crown like the ancients, right? With a crown on his head. And then he had the crook in one hand and the flail in the other. That symbolism comes from ancient Kemet because the symbolism was stolen. The older book by George G.M. James, Stolen Legacy, talks about that. Even the idea of mystery schools talks about that, where, and I think we talked about this before, where most Greeks, when they came to study in ancient Kemet, only lasted 3 years for study. But in order to become a master teacher, we did talk about this. You had to study 33 years in a particular subject in order to be able to become a master teacher. Now, if we move that to another ideology, right? How old was Christ supposed to be? Jesus the Christ. He was supposed to be 33. Okay. So at that particular point in time, he was gone from the age of 13, right? Supposed to be a carpenter. And all of a sudden he leaves from the age of 13 to the age of 30, if I'm not mistaken, or was it 33? I thought he was 33 because that's when he was supposed to be executed. Yeah. 2 plus 2 is 4. 2 plus 2. That's the same numerism, right? Same numerism that is in the story of Jesus the Christ. And it's not Jesus Christ, it's Jesus the Christ, because Christ means the perfect black one. It is the Sanskrit word KRST, not CH, because C did not exist. KRST, Yeshua the Christo, the Christ. Okay, so that's some Bible study and Bible scholarship I need y'all to look up. Go look it up because you're not going to find it in the Bible. That's Akhenaten. No, I'm sorry, Thutmose III. My apologies. Let's go down some more to, nope, stop right there. Right there. Yep, the number 11. That is Ramesses II, which in our Bible is supposed to be Moses' brother. Okay, where's Moses at, though? Where's the pictures of Moses? Where's Moses' mummy? Because if Moses was a priest in the temple of On, knowledgeable in all the wisdom of ancient Egypt, but there's actually remains of Ramesses, his brother. Where's Moses? If one exists, where's the other one? If one still is, he would be buried with near his brother, because if he's a royal family, he's not going to be going somewhere else. And even though he was supposed to lead his people from out of the desert or whatever the story is, then he would still be physically around. Where is he? He couldn't ascend to heaven because he had to go through his brother. His brother was running the kingdom. That's Ramesses II. We see his remains, clearly African, which meant what would that be about Moses? He would clearly be African, but where is Moses at? Where's his remains? Because even if he wandered the desert and they buried him, after he died and they buried him, his remains would still be buried in the desert. Back in ancient times, they would bury people in a fetal position because that's how they were born, which is where we get the idea of being born again. So I know I might be causing y'all some controversy. Good. If it causes you some controversy, I want your head to hurt. But I'm going to say it again. If this is Ramesses II, and in the Bible, it talks about Moses being his brother, then where is Moses? If it's very clear, and we're looking at this picture and I'm pointing at it, if it's very clear that this man existed and there's evidence of his remains, wouldn't his brother be somewhere else? His brother should be over there with him too, right? Where's his brother at? Where's the evidence where's he at? There's physical evidence, and it's in that new museum. Where's the evidence that Moses existed? Because he would be there too. Okay, I'm gonna just let y'all go ahead on with that. All right, let's go back. There you go. Oh, they're gonna be mad. Is that the Narmer plate? Let me see number 13 real quick. Yes. Okay. This is the Narmer plate. Please, no, let's go back and pull that back up, big bro. I want us to look at this, right? There is a pharaoh. Look at his crown and pay attention to the crown on the head of the Pope, right? Same stuff, same look. But look at what he has, a Semite on the ground, and he's getting ready to take his head off. Take your pointer for me real quick and point at his hand that's raised above his head. Yeah. Right. Nope. Not that one. He's holding the hair right there. That's a weapon. He's holding the head of a Semite, of an invader, and he's getting ready to take his head off. A Semite, Hyksos, whatever. And if you look down below his feet, there's others that just already taken their life. That is Narmer. The brother was rough. I think that Narmer plate is in the British Museum. All right, let's go to number 14 real quick. All of those are people from pharaohs from ancient Kemet who up along the now. There's Narmer at the top in the first corner. Zoser, Huni, Khufu, who was the builder of one of the pyramids, Mankare, Mantuhotep, Thutmose III, Amenhotep III, Ramesses the First, Ramesses the Second. Takara was a Nubian who, during the fourth dynastic period, put Upper and Lower Egypt back together again because it had been split up, and he ran some of the invaders out of there. And Psamtik the First. So Takara is very, very important because he helped run on. And there's Ramesses the Second. The Ramesses the Second, the second, third row, number 2. That's supposed to be Moses, supposed to be his brother. All right. Well, now, anyway, let's look at number 15 real quick. Yeah. Now, that boat is very important. What makes that boat important is that is the boat that the Pharaoh would be sailed on to go to Amenta. Amenta is like heaven. So the solar boat, when he or she passes away, they would be put on a boat and literally be, by use of prayer and ritual, be sailed to heaven, even though they had to go through part ritual in order to make sure that they got there. So they had to go through 12 nighttime periods, which they were given money and things like that to pay toll and passage. So for the longest time, what we used to do with our dead when they would die is we give them money, right? We stopped doing that now because we don't really do a real funeral practice anymore. You give them money, and you give them jewels, and you give them everything, anything in order to pay the toll to get to heaven, if they were a right and righteous person. We stopped doing that because people would take the money or things like that from off the person who's passed away because there was grave robbing. So when they were talking about people, well, the ancient Egyptians were taking it. Well, no, you got to understand the symbology was, I want to make sure that I have enough money, enough jewels, gold, whatever, in order to pay the toll for me to get to heaven. So I am going to take it with me so I can pay these tolls. Now the whole idea is, well, they can't take it with them. It's not about that. What people misunderstand is it's about paying the toll, because there's a gatekeeper at every level before you get to heaven that you have to pay. And the ancients wrote it down. That means they knew something more than what we think we know. It wasn't just come in, they passed away, you have a funeral service, you do some prayers. No, they had to have their prayers with them, or the priest did their prayers with them. So every day or every 12 days or however length time it was, they did these prayers in order to make sure that the person, the pharaoh or the queen or whatever, would make it to a mentor. Instead of, okay, we just commit them to they did all of that too, which is where we get funeral practices from. But they also made sure that there was enough there to pay the tolls. And the more that you have to pay the tolls, the easier it was for your passage to be. But you still had to go through the halls of Ani. You still had to have your heart weighed. And if not, then your heart got devoured and you had to come back and repeat the cycle again. So this resurrection, the idea of resurrection, this idea of reincarnation, they're very clear about that. And we see it now. We just don't acknowledge it being African, because if somebody passes away and then a baby is born shortly thereafter, guess what? That baby gonna look like that person. Or that baby gonna have that same, oh man, that look like Uncle Charlie. Why he act like an old man? Why she act like, oh, she an old soul? Everybody done heard that before. Damn man, that's she an old soul. Why she act that way? What's the deal? Well, because we get recycled. And if you have not accomplished whatever your destiny is, you have to come back and finish it. That's what they were talking about. But we don't believe in that because that's too African. But it's true. If you look in your family line, I promise you, there's somebody in there that either your children are gonna look like, or somebody in there that was older that's coming along. Because there was some stuff that they got to finish. They didn't finish the first time. That's African. Okay. If we can go back to the presentation. Man, we got to catch up with our people, bro, because I know they miss me and I miss them too. And we'll get caught up. I promise. I miss Chris and all of them. Let me see. Go to number 16. Well, look at that. It's all gold. It's a sarcophagus, and it's got inscriptions on it. Looks very, very, very similar to the so-called Ark of the Covenant. Now, the Ark of the Covenant, if we follow the story, and there's a book by Dr. Drusilla Hill, written in the late 1800s, called The Wonderful Ethiopians of the Kushite Empire, who talks about, and also Dr. William Leo Hansberry, who talks about the Ethiopians. Got to remember his name because it's one of my favorite books, who talk about the Queen of Sheba, who gets food by Solomon, and they have a son named Menelik, and Menelik goes in with the young priest after he's born, because the trick was when the Queen of Sheba wanted to talk with Solomon about this idea of Christianity, and they had an ancient form of Christianity in ancient Ethiopia, which was much different than what we have now. So and being so beautiful, he of course didn't want to be bothered with his wives and his concubines. He had all of these women that he was, betrothed to, but he sees this beautiful woman and he wants her. Dark skin, probably absolute banging, the whole deal. Sorry, y'all. I got a little bit off. But she was considered to be the most beautiful woman in the world. And he wanted to have her. So he made a bet with her that if you took anything from me while you stay here, then I can have you. That's how struck he was with her. That's how gorgeous she was, right? So what this guy does is He builds a fire and turns the heat up in the room. She wakes up, takes a glass of water. There go the deal. Now, he comes over, wakes her up in the morning, has this wonderful breakfast laid out, and he says, looks in the cup, he says, "You owe me." What do you mean? I didn't take anything from you. I didn't eat anything. I didn't take anything. You took a sip of water. And of course, she had to unfortunately concede because there was no, she was a righteous woman. She conceded by and gave herself to him. From that union, Menelik is born. Menelik is, of course, Solomon wants to keep him because he's a good-looking boy, but she's like, I'm not. He gonna come home with me. No, that's not how this goes because now we're talking about patriarchal system. When you're talking about being in Israel at that time with these people being born. See, these ain't stories that we know. That's the reason why we got to dig and research. So Menelik is born. He's put in there with the other young priests, but he's got these special powers, and people are afraid of him. Queen of Sheba, of course, goes back home, and she's upset. Menelik and some of the other young priests, upon hearing that they too have these special abilities, now they're hearing the elder priest class being scared and jealous of them. They go to Solomon, and then they put a bounty on their head to kill him. Menelik and these other young brothers that got this special power. So Menelik and the other young priests secretly build a replica of the Ark of the Covenant. They build the Ark of the Covenant, take the other Ark, the real Ark, if it existed, because it wouldn't have the broken 10 commandments in it. It would have the 42 admonitions of Ma'at in it. Because if we follow the story of Moses, he tripped and broke some of the tablets. So all he had was 10. So the other tablets that he broke were the other 32 that said you couldn't do certain things and you had to be beholden on to Ma'at. And if you weren't beholden on to Ma'at, Ma'at was the balance in nature. If you weren't beholden on to Ma'at, then you got to go back and repeat this cycle of life again. So Menelik and these young priest brothers decided they were going to take the Ark of the Covenant, and I'm going home. I'm tired of being here with this insanity, and people are threatening us all of the time and everything else. So I'm going to go take this, and we're going to go home. So they built a replica. Load the Ark of the Covenant on a chariot, take off one morning. Meanwhile, Solomon sends his men after them. And so as he touches and prays to the Ark of the Covenant, their trail in the dust, in the desert, gets covered where they can't be found. So he ends up taking the Ark of the Covenant back to his mother. The mother puts it in the church. And to this day, it is said that if you go to Ethiopia and you go near this church and it is heavily guarded, that the people who go in that are the guardians of the ark, right? As soon as they walk into the church or to the place where it's held at, they go immediately blind. And they have a very short lifetime out. But people are clamoring to be part of the ones who guard the ark. And it's heavily guarded by men with machine guns. But the people that are considered to be the priests to go in there to guard the ark, they immediately go blind, and then they don't live very long after that. That's how much power whatever this object is that's there. So I think, who was it? Was Skip Gates? One of them went, tried to go and get it was him. He went over there and they told him, you don't have a right to be here because this is sacred, because he was trying to investigate it. I was like, you can't be here. And they kept him at bay with machine guns. And that was, so they don't divulge that. And Ethiopia was the only country that was not conquered during World War II by any country, even though Mussolini from Italy tried to. So it's a special place. So there may be something to that story. But this particular object, which is a sarcophagus, which is with inscription on it, there you go. 2 plus 2. So we got to do this real serious math. Good afternoon, Miss Wanda. I'm sorry I missed you. Oh no, you just talked a couple minutes ago. But so, and it's okay that we believe what we believe, but you got to go back and talk to great grandma. Stop talking to mom. Mom know what she know, but she don't know what she know like great grandma know. Okay, let's go back to the slides if we can, big bro. Okay, let's go. Yep, that number 20. Gotcha. Okay, at the very top of the pyramid is this capstone. Now, at one time, we see how it's still polished, but at one time, it was more highly polished than this. And through probably weather and touching and everything else like that, it no longer has the sheen that it used to have. It used to be very, very shiny, where it is said that from a distance you could see it and it would reflect the light of the sun or the moon or whatever light that was out in the world. You could see it and it would shine off the pyramids, because the pyramids line up with, especially the large one, the big one, the one right in the middle, lines up exactly with the North Pole, and it is only off by 1 degree due to an earthquake that happened over 10 or 12,000 years ago in ancient Kemet. I'm trying to understand who went up there in that all that cold in order to find out how to do the math. But because they're lined up with the Sirius A, B, and C star, they were able to use the what people want to call the Pythagorean theorem, which is not true. As Amos described, made that 2,500 years before Pythagoras even existed. They give credit to it because Alexander stole stuff from the library, and they give it to Pythagorean. It's not Pythagoras who did it; it was Amos the scribe, and he uses calculations based upon somebody else's calculations in order, because he's just the one that wrote it down, in order to come up with this idea of this triangulation that takes place that makes the capstone there line up with true north, and the middle and the Sirius B star from the dog stars that the Dogon have called the 3 stars. Yep. So when we talk about Orion's belt or the Sirius stars, that's what we're talking about. Right. Anything else, or we gonna shut it here? We're gonna cut it down here. We're gonna shut it down right here. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So we'll be back on at 8:00. If you all did, if you have any comments, make them. Please, though, go study. We put up a book list before. We can make it available the next time we're on. We'll be back next Sunday at 2:00, correct? Unless something comes up. If we have to move some things around, but we're going to try and be consistent on Sunday at 2. And thank you all for joining us. Those who did, if not, catch it. It'll be back on at 8 or 9 or 8 o'clock tonight. It'll be back on at 8. Leave your comments. If you have any questions, we'll answer them. Do your reading and your research, because if we don't start acting like we used to, we understand what's getting ready to come to us. And on that note, this is Black Watch, the Elliott McCants. Thank you. Peace.